Your mates are spoiling their wives with cars and vacations, but look at you. You want me to be an understanding wife? Afoke had always been a girl who turned heads wherever she went. Growing up in the lively streets of Surulere, Lagos, she was the definition of beauty and grace. Even as a child, aunties and uncles would tell her mother, "This your daughter will marry a rich man." No. She had the kind of face that people admired and she knew it. By the time she was in her early 20s, Afoke had become a stunning woman. She was the type that's never settled for less. She had dreams, big ones, and one of those dreams was to marry a man who would give her the soft life she always envisioned. Then came Ojo. She met him on her 25th birthday in an expensive restaurant on the island. She and her friends had decided to celebrate in style. They were all dressed in their finest clothes, laughing loudly as they clicked glasses filled with champagne. Afoke had noticed him from the moment she stepped in. A tall, handsome man dressed in a well-fitted suit, looking like he belonged in a Forbes magazine. He had a quiet but confident presence, and every now and then, she caught him looking in her direction. By the time she was about to leave, he approached her. "Excuse me, miss. I couldn't help but notice how radiant you look tonight." Afoke smiled. She had heard many compliments before, but something about his deep, calm voice made her blush. One conversation led to another, and before she knew it, they were exchanging numbers. That night, she lay in bed, scrolling through his WhatsApp display pictures. Luxury cars, first-class flights, pictures of him in different countries. Finally, she thought, a real man. Their love story was like something from a romance novel. Ojo was wealthy, charming, and generous. He took her on vacations, spoiled her with designer bags, and made her feel like the most special woman in the world. 2 years later, they got married in a grand wedding ceremony. It was the talk of the town. Everything about their life screamed wealth and class. Afoke was living her dream. Their home was a mansion on the island, the kind that made people stop and stare. Imported furniture, marble floors, and a fleet of luxury cars parked outside. She had maids to cater to her every need. She didn't cook, she didn't clean, she just lived the baby girl life. She was proud of her life. She bragged about her husband to her friends. You see, when you marry well, life becomes easy. Ojo is not just a man. He is my provider, my protector, my everything. Her friends envied her and she loved it. But life, as they say, does not always go as planned. One morning, everything changed. Ojo received a devastating phone call. His real estate company had been defrauded in a massive scam. Billions of naira were lost overnight. Clients who had invested huge sums of money in the company were demanding refunds, and the pressure was unbearable. By the time the dust settled, he had lost over 90% of his net worth. The luxurious lifestyle Afoke enjoyed started crumbling. At first, she thought it was just a minor setback. "My husband is a big man. He will fix it," she reassured herself. But days turned into weeks and weeks into months. Nothing changed. Instead, things got worse. Ojo was drowning in debt. He had to sell some of his cars. The lavish shopping trips stopped. The weekend getaways ended. He was no longer the wealthy man she had married. He was now a man struggling to get back on his feet. Afoke was losing her mind. She became frustrated, bitter, and angry. She wasn't just worried about the financial struggles. She was worried about what people would say. What will my friends think if they find out I am no longer rich? How will I explain that I cannot afford luxury anymore? She started resenting Ojo. One evening, as she scrolled through her group chat, she saw messages from her friends planning a girls' trip to Dubai. "Ladies, Let's do a rich auntie's vacation this year. First class tickets, private yachts, the whole soft life experience. Her heart sank. She had been one of the loudest voices in that group, always flexing about her rich lifestyle. Now, she couldn't even afford a flight ticket. She threw her phone across the bed in frustration. Later that night, Ojo sat at the dining table, his hands buried in his head. His food remained untouched. Afoke walked in, arms folded, looking at him with disgust. "So this is what you have become?" She scoffed. Ojo looked up, his tired eyes meeting hers. "You should have told me this was how you were going to end up," she continued, her voice laced with venom. "Just 2 years into marriage and you have made me a beggar. Look at me. Look at my skin. I used to glow from stress-free living. Now I look like a commoner." Ojo remained silent. "Your mates are spoiling their wives with cars and vacations. But look at you. You want me to be an understanding wife? May the heavens forbid. I can never cope with such a lifestyle. See my friends planning a trip, and I can't even go because of how stupid you were to let yourself get defrauded. You are just a child in an adult's body." Ojo felt something snap inside him. It wasn't just the words, it was the way she said them. Cold, heartless. This was not the woman he married. The same woman he had once adored. The same woman he had spoiled with everything she ever wanted. And now that he was at his lowest, she was kicking him when he was already down. He stood up slowly, looking at her with an expressionless face. "You never loved me," he finally said, his voice calm but firm. Afoke scoffed. "What do you mean? You loved the money, you loved the luxury, but you never loved me." She rolled her eyes and turned away. "Abeg, spare me all this emotional talk. What I know is that you better get back on your feet, or else this marriage will not work." Ojo took a deep breath, his heart heavy. He had always believed marriage was for better or worse. But now he realized something. Some people don't stay when things get worse. Some people only love you when you are winning, and Afoke was one of them. He looked at her one last time, then quietly walked out of the room. For the first time, he started rethinking everything. Had he married the wrong woman? Ojo stayed up that night, staring at the ceiling, deep in thoughts. Everything had changed. His business was in shambles. His bank accounts were almost empty. But the real loss wasn't the money, it was his marriage. Afoke had shown him her true colors. She had made it clear that her love was conditional, tied to his wealth, his status, his ability to provide luxury. Now that he was struggling, she saw him as a burden, a failure. And that realization cut deeper than any financial loss ever could. For the first time in his life, Ojo knew what he had to do. He could no longer beg for love from a woman who didn't respect him. The next morning, as Afoke walked into the dining room, Ojo was already sitting there, waiting for her. She barely acknowledged him, scrolling through her phone as she sat down. "We need to talk," he said, his voice calm but firm. She signed dramatically, placing her phone on the table. "Talk about what?" Ojo exhaled. His fingers tapping lightly on the wooden surface. "I think it's best if you leave this house." Afoke blinked. "Wait, what?" "You heard me," he repeated, this time with more authority. "You should pack your things and leave." She laughed dryly, thinking it was a joke. "Ojo, are you okay? Which house do you want me to leave?" "This one," he said simply. Her smile faded. "You are not serious," she scoffed. "You want to send your own wife out of the house? Because of what?" Ojo leaned forward slightly. "Because I have come to realize that you never loved me. You only loved the money. And now that the money is gone, you have made it clear that I am no longer your spec." Afoke's heart raced. This was not the begging, struggling Ojo she was used to. This Ojo was different. He was serious. Are you joking right now? She asked, forcing out a laugh. I have never been more serious in my life, he said. Pack your things and go. Afoke froze. She had never imagined this. She thought Ojo would always beg her. She thought he would cling to her no matter what. She underestimated him. Ojo, listen. I was just upset yesterday. You know I didn't mean all those things I said. She tried to soften her voice. Yes, you did, he replied simply. You meant every single word. Ojo, come on. We have been through a lot together, she protested. You can't just throw me out. You threw yourself out the day you chose your friends over me, he said, standing up. Afoke's mind was spinning. She thought about the life she would be walking away from, the mansion, the status, the luxury. If she left now, what would she tell her friends? How would she explain that the same man she used to brag about had kicked her out? Ojo, please. She tried again, her voice quieter now. I was just frustrated. You know I love you. Ojo shook his head. If you loved me, you would have stood by me when I needed you the most. But you didn't. You mocked me. You insulted me. You made me feel worthless. Tears welled up in her eyes. She never expected this. She never thought Ojo would ever stand up to her like this. Please, just give me another chance, she whispered. I promise I will be better. But Ojo was done. You can go back to your friends, he said. Maybe one of them will take you in. Afoke sobbed. She had thought she was untouchable. She thought Ojo needed her too much to ever let her go. But she had been wrong. By evening, she was gone. The weeks that followed were hard for Afoke. At first, she stayed with one of her friends, but she quickly realized something. Her friends were not as supportive as she had thought. The same women she had bragged to about her perfect marriage were now gossiping about her downfall. So Ojo actually kicked her out? I thought she was the queen of the soft life. See how life can humble someone. Slowly, they started distancing themselves from her. She had no money, no home, no husband. For the first time in her life, she was truly alone. Meanwhile, Ojo focused on rebuilding his life. His lawyer had been relentlessly investigating the fraud case. And finally, after months of tracking, the criminals were caught. With the help of the authorities, Ojo recovered his stolen funds, every single kobo. And just like that, his fortune returned. But this time, he was wiser. He learned not to trust everyone with his money. He learned the value of true companionship. And most importantly, he learned that some people only love you when you are winning. With his business back on its feet, Ojo became bigger and better than ever. He expanded beyond Lagos, opening real estate branches in Abuja and Port Harcourt. He bought back everything he had sold and even more. This time, he was not just wealthy, he was powerful. And Afoke, she heard about his success through social media. She saw the pictures of him traveling the world, looking happier than ever. She saw the articles praising him for his resilience and comeback story. And it broke her. One evening, she sent him a message. Ojo, can we talk? She waited. An hour passed, then 2, then 5, no reply. The next day, she sent another one. Ojo, I just want to say I'm sorry. Please, let's talk. Still no reply. She called him. The number you're trying to call is currently unavailable. She tried again and again and again, nothing. She wasn't just blocked, she was erased. Ojo had moved on. She sat in her small rented apartment, scrolling through her old pictures, remembering the life she had thrown away. She had once been the wife of a great man. Now she was nobody. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she whispered to herself, I should have been patient. I should have stood by him. But it was too late. She had lost the only man who ever truly loved her, and he was never coming back. Moral lesson: true love is tested in difficult times. If someone only loves you when things are good, they don't truly love you. Money comes and goes, but character remains. How you treat people when they are at their lowest determines your true nature. Loyalty matters in relationships. When you marry someone, you stand by them through thick and thin. Never underestimate people. The same person you take for granted today can be the one who rises tomorrow and leaves you behind. The end. Please subscribe, like, and share for more stories.